What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Panda here. And yes, we are recording literally right after the last video that you saw talking about the 10x banner coming up this weekend. But I wanted to go ahead and just quickly make this video on the new champion that's coming to the game because I'm already here. I'm ready to go. Let's just get it done and over with, right? The new champion coming to the game is Kai. He is a piercer marksman character. He looks really cool. I just want to start with that. It's weird seeing a heavy armor person with a ranged crossbow. It's a little weird. It's not very common that you see archers wearing heavy armor, but I gotta say the aesthetic is very nice. I love this dragon aesthetic. I'm assuming he is a dragon killer because he has this like wing of a dragon as a cape, which is really awesome. He also has all these scales down here. Looks like he's wearing full dragon hide as armor, which is awesome. And it looks like he even maybe has a dragon skull as part of his crossbow. So very cool design. I love him. He looks kind of similar to Rex in the head department, but kind of to be expected. Eventually, you got to use some stuff again. But ultimately, I think his design is really cool. But let's talk about the thing that's most important, guys, his kit. So first things first, his range. His range is pretty decent, right? He's got this like 4x3 box, which isn't too shabby. I mean, it's definitely not a bad range. Pretty good. His things here are multi-target attack and trap. This is pretty exciting. I don't think we've seen trap before, except on what is it? Cuke, I think, has a poison trap. I don't think we have any other traps in the game. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I probably am. But let's dive right in. Let's look at his talent. So every 15 seconds, the next basic attack is changed into placing one worm snare on a random tile in range. The snare lasts at most 30 seconds, dealing 25% extra damage to enemies inflicted with Immobilize. So Worm Snare triggers when enemies pass by, dealing 100% damage to up to 3 nearby enemies while inflicting Immobilize on them for 3 seconds. When triggered in advance by a cluster projectile, deals 150% AoE damage to up to 5 enemies in a larger range, and inflicts Immobilize on them for 5 seconds instead. Worm Snare is immediately consumed upon activation. So that's kind of cool. So this is not necessarily just like things such as AI bombs. You can actually trigger them early by basic attacking, I guess, like using a cluster projectile, which I assume is an AoE. If it hits the snare, it does more AoE. Seems like a very strong AoE champion for sure. Let's look at the rest of the stuff. Basic and deals 100% damage up to 5 enemy units. So that's actually 120% up to 5 enemy units, which is 600% damage. Not too bad. Not great, but not too bad. Let's look at the passive first. Doomsday Reprise. Doomsday Cluster has a 20% chance of an immediate second cast being ready after each cast. This effect can be triggered up to 1 time every 20 seconds, and it actually goes up to 35% chance. So I'm not sure what Doomsday Cluster is. It looks like it's the ultimate. Cool, we'll come back to that. Upon triggering a worm snare, increase crit rate by 20% and crit damage by 40% for 6 seconds. This effect cannot be stacked when there are multiple worm snare. So it actually ends up going up to 60% crit damage for 8 seconds. So I don't know how I feel about this. Of course, crit damage is very good in the game. You can focus a little more on attack by having this crit damage bonus. But I will say crit rate feels kind of useless. I guess it depends on if this is up 100% of the time. If it's up 100% of the time, then it's very good because then you can literally build him with 80% crit and never have to worry about being below. Similar to something like Setram. It might even be better than Setram because Setram has to build up to that number, while as he would get it right away. So it might even be a little bit stronger than Setram. But that's going to depend on the uptime of Eradication Protocol, which I am unfamiliar with. So we'll have to see what that looks like. Maybe if you guys are on Forerunner and you happen to have Kai, or you have access to the test server, which I know there are very few people. And of course, those would be content creators. So if you're a content creator and you have info on Kai and you want to share it, I would appreciate that. But yeah, this seems like an okay passive. We'll have to see what the uptime is. We'll go from there. And then, of course, the ultimate, which is Doomsday Cluster. It's a manual ultimate. We love that. 900 cost, 400 starting energy. It does go down to 700 cost, which is pretty decent. And then it launches a cluster projectile at one enemy in range, causing an explosive impact upon contact. The explosion deals 350% AoE damage to up to 8 nearby enemies, and splits the projectile into 3 small bombs. After a short delay, the small bombs detonate, each dealing 100% AoE damage to up to 5 nearby enemies. The cluster projectile can trigger every worm snare within the blast radius in advance. That's pretty nice. This also actually goes up to 500% AoE damage to 8 and 150% AoE damage up to 5. So definitely seems like a very, very AoE centric kit. Probably going to be usable in places such as Gear Raid, potentially Gear Raid 1. We'll have to see. It probably won't be great simply because it's physical damage, it's piercing, and you want more magic damage, but it could be viable because of just the amount of damage that he's able to do. For example, in my Gear Raid 1, I use Hatsut and Abomination, and I actually am able to deal a good chunk of damage. Kai could be someone similar to that. If you have a defense down champion and physical vulnerability champion, he could still be usable in Gear Raid 1. However, it looks like he's probably going to be the most viable in Gear Raid 3, simply because he's a Marksman Piercer. I will be interested to see how these worm snares work, because from what I understand, worm snares can only be placed on the bottom, like on the ground tiles, which means he may actually not be very good in Gear Raid 3 because there's very few ground tiles, and the ground tiles that are there are in the center, and most likely you're going to want your AoE units on the left or right side of the map. So we'll have to see. It's going to depend on how strong his ultimate and his basic is to see if he's actually going to do anything. But I have a feeling most of the damage is going to be in the worm snare stacked on top of the ultimate. We'll have to see what that looks like. But let's dive real quick into his awakens, and then we'll go ahead and end this video off. So his A1, each cluster projectile launched by Doomsday Cluster inflicts burning. Okay, so that thing I said before about how he's going to be useful in Gear Raid 1, definitely, if you can get him to A1, he's going to be great in Gear Raid 1. The reason is because we have Abomination. Abomination has burning on his ultimate, and when you trigger his ultimate twice, he is going to do a lot of burning damage, and burning is affected, it's magic damage, right? So it's affected by magic resistance instead of defense, which means you're actually going to be able to deal a good chunk of damage. So if you happen to get Kai and you get Kai to A1, he's probably going to be very viable for Gear Raid 1 because of this burning. His A2 gives a flat attack. We love that. A3, decrease the interval of placing Worm Snare by 5 seconds, and it will inflict defense reduction when triggered. So great. Again, same kind of thing as I mentioned with Hatsut and Abomination. This guy looks like he's going to be basically Hatsut and Abomination combined if you can get him to A3, which I know is a lot to ask, and we'll have to see what his damage looks like to see if it's actually worth it, but overall, looking like not bad awakens. His A4 is 5% penetration, always good. And his A5, each cluster projectile launched by Doomsday Cluster splits into 3 extra small bombs after explosion. So the way that I'm understanding this is he launches 1, it splits into 3, and then those 3 split into 3 more each. Or is it 1 splits into 6? I'm not quite sure. We'll have to see what that looks like. I wish it... Does it show us? It doesn't show us with A1. It just shows us with basic. So, unfortunately, I won't have access to that information. But another thing that's I think is really good is Immobilize. Immobilize has Unable to Move, which... for, again, someplace like Gear Raid 1 could be very good because if they can't move, they can't hit your wall, which means he could be very good at slowing them down, even better than someone like, say, such as a Mari, because of the Worm Snares proccing. You know, it could be very, very powerful. We'll have to see, though, because it is only 3 enemies, and I doubt you're going to get a lot of them because it's 15 seconds, and also you're not going to get too many of them. But it could be very, very good in Gear Raid 1. I'm excited for him. If I get him, I'm not going to be mad. I would definitely be a little disappointed I don't get Vierna, but he definitely seems like a decent champion. If you happen to get him, especially in the early game, he's going to probably do a lot for you. We'll have to see what it's like for those of us that have, you know, better champions such as a Hatsut or, you know, a Nyx or a Razak, right? Because we already have those champions they're probably already invested in. So we'll have to see if he's actually worth the investment, but it looks like he's going to fill a similar role to that of Nyx or Razak. But guys, that is it for me today. Let me know in the comment section down below if you liked this video, if you're going to pull for Kai, if you're excited about Kai. Leave that comment down below and let me know, because I am excited about him. He seems cool. We'll have to see if we get him. We might build him, do a little showcase. Kind of depends. But guys, that's going to be it for me today. Please don't forget to hit that like button if you liked the video, if you want to see more content from me in the future, and make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.